Hello, good morning and very soon good afternoon. Good to see everybody on the call. We are going to give it just a few more minutes just to see who else will be joining, but great to have you all. Okay, nearly there, everybody. I can see there's some more attendees joining the lobby. We should be able to start within the next 2 minutes. So this is the first time that we are doing a webinar through Teams. Usually we go for Zoom. Can I just see if you can all hear me okay? Can you see me okay? There's some way for you to use the react buttons or perhaps post something into the chat to confirm. Okay, there we go. Loads of reactions coming up. There we go. Amazing, amazing. Okay. All right. Okay. Awesome. Well, I am very excited to take you all through what has changed and what additions we've put into the audit toolbar in this most recent update. But I want to start it off by just giving all of you a massive thank you. It is down to your feedback and your experience with the audit toolbar and these conversations that we have that allows us to map out a path forward where we can get to that end goal of just improving the lives of auditors as much as we can. So thank you to everybody that has contributed to this update. And let me just see. All right. Okay. Awesome. So if you have any questions as I go through, you should see a Q&A function coming up. If you could please post them in the Q&A function. If we do use the chat for those questions, it sometimes disappears into the conversation. So the Q&A function makes sure that it ensures that we do get to your questions. Okay. All right, I'm going to start sharing my screen and we're going to have a look at Excel. Okay. Awesome. Okay. There we go. Right. Cool. Can I just get a quick reaction to see if you can see my screen clearly? Yeah, loads of thumbs ups coming in there. Amazing. All right. Okay. I do see some raised hands in the webinar. I think what might be best is if you do have a question there, just throw it into the Q&A. Sort of because yeah, there we go. All right, then we can go for the Q&A sections. Okay, so very warm welcome everybody. I'm super excited to take you through. I think what I want to show everybody today is more or less the outline on my screen there. We're going to be talking about the user interface, the new workflow that we've added. We're going to talk about the guidance panel, central management of tick marks and templates. We're going to talk about some of the changes in the GL cleaners, as well as sampling, and there is a lot of smaller enhancements to different functions that we're going to touch on. Okay, now there is a few big things overarching all of this. One of those is our user portal. So this is caps.audittoolbar.com, which allows you to kind of manage all of your licenses in the firm and everybody using the Audit Toolbar in your firm. There's also synchronization from our training platform that goes into that portal, and so you can see how your team has progressed with training as well. So we'll touch on that at the end as well. All right. Okay, so let's get started. So the first thing and the biggest change that you will see the moment that you install this version of the Audit Toolbar is that you'll notice the user interface has significantly changed. And the reason behind this is we wanted to make it a bit easier for auditors to find the function that they're looking for. The challenge was prior to this layout is that sometimes you don't realize what's actually available for your use. And so you do end up doing that manual work, whereas there could have been a function in the Audit Toolbar that could have saved you that time. Okay, so we've structured all of the functions in the Audit Toolbar into 5 distinct workflows. So cleaning and structuring, formatting and enhancing, templating and documenting, analyzing and sampling, and then finally ticking and bashing. So the idea behind that is if you are busy cleaning up data and you need something to support you in that process, you should be able to just go into the cleaning and structuring section and have a look at the functions available to you there and find the one that can help you in that specific moment. So the high-level layout of these workflows usually contains a main function, right? So sort of the most popular function for that section, followed by the rest of that the rest of the functions in that section. You'll have a few on the ribbon itself, and you'll always have that more drop down that'll take you deeper into more options that you might have available. Okay, right. So that's the biggest thing in terms of the user interface. Now, with this user interface, you know, there is a new workflow that we've added, which is this formatting and enhancing. Some of the functions that was on the old version of the Audit Toolbar did make its way into this workflow. That being said, this workflow contains a lot of new functions. So let me take you all through this workflow and just show you what is possible within that workflow. All right, so let's go over to a worksheet here. Okay, right. So looking at this workflow, the idea here is just to aid you in those quick formatting functions that might come up as you do your work, right? So let's say perhaps you are looking at this data set and you've got some numbers here. However, they're showing as positive, but you actually want to see them as negative, right? So you want to do a flip signs there. So you'll be able to call up that flip signs function in the formatting enhancing workflow, and you can see it just runs through and it flips those signs over. So you can quite easily just flip back and forth. And if you wanted more formatting options, you can just click that more drop down, right? And you can see the formatting options have been categorized into date, number, or text manipulation. And so if we look at number manipulation in this case, you can quite easily work with those different formatting situations you might come across. So numbers to text, text to numbers, positive to negative, negative to positive, and absolute values. Okay. Now there's similar functions in here. If we look at date manipulation, this has always been a headache where depending on what your data looks like when you get it, you know, sometimes those date formats that you get is really difficult to work with, and you need a proper date format in order for you to build calculations off of it. And so if you go for something like a date text to date, that means it's going to step you through how to convert those dates, right? So if you've got a full stop instead of a forward slash, or you've got a month starting point or a day starting point, this function will be able to convert that into a recognizable date. that you can then use in further calculations. Okay, in addition to this, there's also the text manipulation formulas there. Depending on what it is you're trying to achieve, maybe there's some descriptions that you just want the formatting slightly adjusted, so you'll have those options available to you. All right. Now, interestingly enough, one of my favorite functions on here, something that I continuously use, is the copy and paste values, right? So it's a very, I'll show you a trick on this. So it's a very simple function. It just takes your formulas. If you needed to paste those values, you click that function and whatever you've got highlighted will run through. So for example, if we just take these two columns and we add them together and just give that little fold, you can now see my column J as formulas within them, right? And so what we're actually interested in is just getting those core values pasted. So I'll highlight my range and I'll go into this menu and click copy and paste values. So very straightforward, very simple function there, but you can see my values have been pasted. Now, a nice little trick on this is that when you go into that menu, you can just right click on copy and paste values. This is something I keep doing. You can only do it once, I just always reset it. But you can right click on that copy and paste values and say add quick access toolbar, right? Now, once you do, you'll notice the button popping up on your quick access ribbon there. So what this means now is that whenever you want to execute that function, you can press Alt on your keyboard. And once you do, you'll see the shortcuts popping up. And so in this case, you can see a 5 has appeared above that value. And so I'll just press 5 on my keyboard and it'll actually execute the function. So whenever you need to copy and paste values now, you just hit Alt and 5 on your keyboard. Okay. Right. Now, if we head back into that section, you'll also notice some quick formatting buttons available to you. This was available on the previous version as well, but just to remind you all, you can sort of store your favorite formatting settings using that. Okay, so let's quickly go and try one. So what I'm going to do is this cell over here, I'm going to go for bold and an italic, and let's say a highlight of yellow. Let's say that is a go-to format that I usually use. So you can see it's set on that cell. Now, whilst that cell is highlighted, I'm going to go ahead and press one of my formatting slots. So F1 in this case, and the Audit Toolbar is now memorized with the formatting in that slot. And so now when I need to use that again, I can just highlight a range and press F1 again, and you can see it has now applied that formatting for me. And once again, really cool if you add this to your quick access, because now you can press, in this case, Alt and 6, and it's actually going to apply that formatting. Okay. Right. So that more or less covers the formatting enhancing section. And I would highly recommend that you play around with that, have a go with it, and see what you can do there. Okay. Now, as you're going through the Audit Toolbar and you're getting used to it and you're getting used to the new functions, there's a very key addition that we've recently added, right? So this is our guidance panel. Now, the idea behind this guidance panel is just to help you make sense of some of the functions in here as you're learning and getting comfortable with the Audit Toolbar. So all you need to do is in your help and support section, you click on guidance and you'll see a panel popping up on the right-hand side. Now that's going to take a few minutes to load. It's just pulling up a guidance database for the Audit Toolbar. And once that guidance database has been completed, what you can do is then execute any of the functions in the Audit Toolbar exactly the same way that you would normally do. But as soon as you execute a function like flip signs in this example, you can see that guidance panel has updated and it is now explaining to us in detail how flip signs work and how we can best use it. So if you're kind of stuck on a function and you're not sure how it works, you can just make sure your guidance panel is open, work the function same as you normally would, and the guidance panel will just guide you and explain path through it. All right, amazing. So there we go. So that's our guidance panel, especially for new people in the firm. Hopefully that will be very, very useful. Okay. Awesome stuff. All right, let's see. Okay, so we had a look at the new interface, the new workflow that we added, the formatting enhancing, and we also commented on the guidance panel. Please play around with that and see what things you can learn around the functions in the Audit Toolbar. Then there's two sections here that I want to talk about: the central management of tick marks and templates. And if you are not a Audit Toolbar champion or an administrator in your firm, please kind of ignore this section. And if you are, I'm going to do a light touch on this, and you can speak to us to explore it a bit further. Okay, so what we wanted to do was we wanted to simplify the way that you add your templates into the Audit Toolbar repository, right? So in the past, the way this would work is you would have to go to your server and create a folder and put your Excel-based templates there, and everybody in the firm would link to that location on the server. So that's how it used to work in the past. What happens now is if you are an administrator, officially an administrator of the Audit Toolbar or Audit Toolbar champion in your firm, your Audit Toolbar will have managed templates available. Okay. Now, if you're not an administrator, you won't be able to execute these functions. That being said, if you are, you'll have this available. Now, if you wanted to set up a template, you can just create a new document in your workbook. Let's call this new template. Okay. You can create a brand new Excel file if you want. And then you can start adding your content. Okay, so just for simplicity, I'm just going to add some fields here for my new template. Okay, so let's assume for the moment that is the new template, and I'd like to see this template available to everybody in the firm on their template menus. Okay, so once that is set up, I'm going to go to Manage Templates in the Help and Support section there, and I'll go ahead and click on Add New. Okay, and then I'll go ahead and click on Add Templates. Right, so you can see there is a window that popped up. And so from here, I can then give this template a name, right? It's defaulting to my sheet name, so it's calling it new template, but I can put my referencing steps in there. I can sort of, if my firm has a structure that says if it's a PP&E template, it has to start with this code, etc., I can just make sure I'm complying with that and fill in that detail. Next up, I can add it to a specific category, right? So you'll see there's a few categories available to me here. For now, I'll just go for the basic templates to illustrate the point. Okay, and I'll hit continue. And what this has done now is it's taken the single sheet, right? And it's pushed that up into my server where I'm working at the moment. And this is why this function is limited to administrators. Okay, so it's pushed this up to my server, and just want to make sure if I am connected to the right place. Let's see. Okay, so if I go for basic templates now, you can see a new template has become available. So we've kind of simplified the way you add it. Any Excel file you're working on, you can create it and push it up as a template. It'll be available for everybody else. Okay, I appreciate that's a bit more complex, right? And so if you are going to take a first swing at this, or you have some more questions and you want to do a more detailed session on this, you can reach out to your Client Success Manager. And you'll notice in the Get Support section of the Audit Toolbar, there is a menu here with loads of support options. You can call your Client Success Manager directly, you can chat with them on WhatsApp, or you can go for the formal routes of logging a ticket or emailing support there. And so any of those options will put you in touch with your Client Success Manager, and they'll be able to hold your hand through those initial steps in terms of editing your templates on the new methodology. All right. Amazing. As a reminder, please feel free to post any questions you've got. It would be awesome to just hear your thoughts and feedback. All right. Okay. Now that was looking at how we can better manage our templates. You'll also notice the template structure has changed to part of the new user interface. And when you go to the More menu, you'll notice there is the old push to Word and push to PowerPoint functions. They've just moved into templating and documenting. But you also have this option to push data to Outlook. So perhaps you are looking at some transactions and you want to ask your manager what their thoughts are on those transactions. You can simply go to More and click Push to Outlook, and it's going to take your highlighted data, put it in an email, and you can then ask your questions or ask your client what it is that you wanted to ask them. Right. Okay. Cool. Now moving on to tick marks. So we've refined a lot of the methods in which tick marks work. But the biggest change to tick marks is a formal approach to getting your tick marks centrally managed. Okay, so in the past it was quite clunky if you wanted to have a certain setup in terms of tick marks deployed to the entire firm. So uh, your tick marks on the face of the ribbon, your tick marks in the tick mark menu, as well as your tick mark legend and all the subsequent descriptions. You can now, if you are an administrator, you can now set it up exactly the way you want to see this for the entire firm on your machine. And then in a similar way to how we just did templates, you can push that up to the rest of the firm, right? Let us just see. Uh, right. Yeah, so in a quite similar way, you can push that up to your firm so that everybody can see it. I think it is not picking me up as administrator now, but regardless, that's the sort of the biggest change behind tick marks. Everything else still works in the same way. You'll notice some of your tick mark settings has moved from the tick mark section into the manage tick marks button in the help and support. So things like, do you want to go for an embedded tick mark or an image-based tick mark? You set that up in the manage tick mark section over there. All right. Cool. There we go. All right. We're moving through this agenda here. So that's good. um, Amazing. Okay, now let me talk about GL cleaners, right? So there is a small change that we have added to GL cleaners. Firstly, we did add a few new accounting systems to GL Cleaners. So the first one being Microsoft Dynamics. So if you do have lots of clients using Microsoft Dynamics as an accounting system, you can now clean those GLs the same way that you previously did with all the other GL cleaners. Okay, now in addition to that, very specifically for our UK client base, we have added spin-offs to some of the existing accounting systems that is better suited to the UK market. So one common one that came up was Sage 50 accounts, for example. So that's a brand new addition there. And in addition to that, there's also a Zero adaptation for the UK market as well within that Zero menu. Okay. For our South African client base, I think you will most likely just stay with the default Zero option there. But if you do come across Sage 50 or any of the other systems, you of course more than welcome to use that. All right. Now there is a further change when we actually launch the GL Cleaner, right? So if we have a look at the sort of standard, I've got a QuickBooks GL here. And if I want to clean up this GL, I'll go ahead and tell the Audit Toolbar, this is a QuickBooks GL desktop, a QuickBooks desktop GL. Okay. Now, what's happened here is that you'll notice before we start screens, that there is some additions that's been dropped in here. Okay. The first one is this option to change your default date format. Okay, and the reason why we added this is that by default, these GL cleaners have been built in such a way to understand the data that's come in, right? And so you can, without changing any settings, you can just hit continue and everything will be, will work as you are used to it. However, if you are dealing with an odd variation of QuickBooks Desktop, for example, where the date format doesn't quite fit, right? Because we saw a few oddities coming through in our support line. You can go ahead and edit that date format to say, well, actually, my dates don't align with the default that we're always expecting. My dates actually look like this. And that'll just enable this thing to run successfully, even if you've got one of those oddball GLs. Okay. Right, but the default will always be the sort of the 80% general normal type of GL that you get, so you don't always have to change that. Okay, now the next function that is included in here, this is something that I anticipate will be expanding over time as well. But if we have a look at this include quick analytics, you can tick this box here. And what you'll notice is there's a few additional options, right? Now, these options will vary depending on what the default data looks like from that accounting system. And so there is some opportunity for us to pull out certain pieces of information as the Audit Toolbar is cleaning up the GL. Okay, so for instance, I might want to clean my GL as a starting point because I'm getting ready for my audit, of course. But at the same time, I know that we'll have to look at all the material items in any case, right? So I can tick this box here that says, please identify my material items. And so in addition to your normal 2 sheets that you will get when you clean up a GL, you will get an additional sheet showing you all the material items, which means you can then just send that sheet directly to your client as you start it and you say, let's start with supporting information on these. And so as you start working through those sections, you already have the supporting documentation for that. Right. You can also, in this case, identify fully rounded numbers if that's something you are after, or you can identify any transactions that took place over the weekend. And like I said, the options will vary because sometimes your data set will have something like user data, right? So it'll tell you who's been posting what, or it might have something else. And so those options will vary depending on the accounting systems. Okay, but let's run this and let's see what it looks like. So I'm going to click continue. It's cleaning that GL the same way it normally does, but at some point it's going to stop and ask me what is my materiality value. So let's give that a second to work through. All right. Hmm. Okay. I think this webinar is taking a lot of resources here, but there we go. It's now asked me for by materiality value, and let's just say in this case we talked about 1.5. Um, and so it's given me my normal sheets, same as before. So we started with the raw data. We got a nice clean version of that data set, as you can see here, where we can sort and filter and search. We also have the normal pivot table that comes out. However, we do have a material sampling sheet. That's an addition that's been added now, and it has flagged out anything that is material in this data set. And so therefore I can now deal with this accordingly. Okay, just a quick example there. Yeah, so that was some of our additions in GL cleaners. And as always, there's been some continuous refinement and enhancement to individual GL cleaners to incorporate more versions, more oddities, etc. And so please continue reporting to us if you find any issues there. And even report to us if you don't, right? We'd love to hear your stories and your experiences. So we can also get energized by it, but also share that amongst new potential clients as well. Um, right. I'll give you an example. There was a very interesting story recently that came up where an audit trainee moved from one firm to the other firm. And when they learned that the new firm doesn't actually use the audit toolbar, they actually pushed back against the offer and they said, actually, I don't want to work there if you're not using the audit toolbar. So I love that story and I think that's an amazing story. So if you've got stories like that, please send us an email and let us know. Yeah, there we go. Okay. All right. Let me just see. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is our sampling, right? So there has been some changes to sampling. And I think the biggest issue that we had from our side in sampling was that as time went on and we added more sampling methods and added more steps and options to our sampling screen, it became quite bulky and complicated. And that sort of diverged from the theme of the audit toolbar. What we always want to do is just have something that's simple, easy to use, very intuitive. And so we felt that the sampling screen was moving away from that. So we went ahead and started simplifying it. Okay, so the first and biggest thing you'll notice is instead of when you click on the sampling tool, instead of getting that big pop-up, you actually get a drop-down menu, right? And so your starting point will be to choose your sampling method. Right, so all your favorite sampling methods or your normal sampling methods that you used to, they're all there. And if we just go for a random sample, if I click on that, you can see it's a much more simplified screen that you've got here compared to the previous one. So we're just focusing on a random sample here. And so we can enter our number of items we need and we can click continue. All right. And so same as before, you'll get a new sheet and in your new sheet, you will get your sample that you have selected. Okay, that being said, this brings me to the second biggest change on the sampling tool is that your description is now greatly enhanced. Okay, So in the past, we had that one-liner above your sample to explain how we got to that sample. And so instead of just that one-liner, we've filtered that out a little bit more. So you can see who has selected the sample and when. You can see the methodology behind it, the population size, the sample size, population value, sample value, etc., and also your percentage coverage as well. So you've got a lot more information that you can draw into your working paper from this point on. Okay. Now, staying on the sampling tool, if we go back to this random sample, uh, the options for you to add the material items to your sample or to remove certain items, sort of exclude certain items from your sample, it is still there. It's just hidden behind this advanced button, right? So if you're not going to go for those advanced settings, you don't need to, and you don't need to be worried about it. But if you want to, you click on that advanced button, and you can see it opens up those normal functions that you would hopefully be quite used to at this point. Okay, so now we can go ahead and do our 10 items at random. We can include our material values. We can exclude certain values, and we can go ahead and highlight those selections or even email the sample out. So let's just tick both those boxes. So quite a few options have been inserted in there. We'll hit continue. It's going to run through and select that sample. It's now also going into my Outlook and it's drafting up a new email for me and attaching my sample in an Excel file on that email. So you'll see this email popping up. There we go. And so now I can go ahead and send this email to my colleague, my manager, the client, whatever the case is, and the sample has been attached. The sample looks the same as the sample that's been generated. However, it excludes all the descriptions behind it. It simply just gives you a single table that is relevant to a client. Okay. Now, even though it started up the email and it's attached the sample to that email, if we go back to our workbook, right, we drew a sample from here. You can see my material items is grouped together at the top. I've got my 10 items at random here at the bottom. Nothing in here is below 50 because we want to exclude that, right? And you can see this description has been updated accordingly. Yeah, so all of the other relevant items are still there, same as before. So material items, anything above 1300, excluded values, anything below 50, sample size, population size, etc. All right. Now, you would have remembered that when we drew the sample, we also ticked the box that says highlight selections, right? So if I go back to my source document, you can see all of your selections there because of that highlight selections. Now, a lot of what I'm saying here is merging between the old and the new. So some of these things was available in the previous version, some of it not, but I'm just trying to give you a sense of that flow. All right. Awesome. Okay. Right, so that covers our sampling tool. We will soon go into Q&A, so please post any questions that might come to mind. Now, the next thing I wanted to just cover is I wanted to talk about some of the feature enhancements that's come out. So when we drill down into the detail, there's been a lot of little tweaks, bigger tweaks, things like that here and there, right? So let's start off with the combine sheets function. Now, on the previous version, you could combine sheets, but only sheets in the active workbook. So you would go ahead and say combine, click combine, and you would get a screen like this, where you can select the sheets in your active workbook that you'd like to merge together. Okay, so that function is still there, right? The difference is that it is now sitting under combine active workbook, okay, when you want those sheets in a single workbook. However, you can go for multiple workbooks now, right? So this addition means that when it launches up, you will be required to select a folder. Okay, so I'll click on that button to browse to a folder. Okay, and in this case, I've got a folder here with 4 Excel files included in it. So I'll click OK, and it's now busy going through those Excel files in that folder, and it's busy looking at all the different sheets, and it's going to build us a list on this pop-up message. All right, so there you go. So you can see now it has pulled up all the sheets from all those different workbooks. It's telling us it's got book 1 there, book 2, and then book 3 only has 1 sheet, book 4 only has 1 sheet. And so I can go ahead and say I want to combine these different sheets, or I can say I want to combine all. And once I do that, it's gonna run through all those sheets and actually add a sheet to this workbook that will show us a combination of all of the above. All right. So let's have that run. It is going to take a second because it is working through multiple workbooks there. But let's give that a moment and you'll see the result shortly. I appreciate that seeing the result might not make sense because we haven't actually seen the separate workbooks, but hopefully the point comes across. Right. Okay. All right. So you can see there it's added a new sheet called combined workbook, right? And so in this sheet, it has built a single table with all the data from those different workbooks. And same as the old function, it is looking at the column headers. And then based on the column headers, it's trying to figure out what is supposed to be allocated where. And if there's a slight difference in column headers, right? So some of those sheets had a total cost one instead of a total cost. It's going to assume that that might be a different column. So it'll just add that at the end. And so we can deal with that accordingly and say, well, actually, it's not. We'll move that in manually. In the case where some data sets has less value than others, it's going to allocate those data points to the correct columns, and it bases all of that on the column headers. All right. Amazing. Okay. Now, there's one more thing I want to quickly talk about in that cleaning and structuring section there. Just give me one moment. Right. Okay. Heading back into Excel shortly. All right. Awesome. So, okay. So in the previous version of the audit toolbar, we had this function called remove ins and outs. Okay. Now, the purpose of this function is to just support us in those cases where, perhaps we're looking at general expenses, GL account. And the challenge is that sometimes you want to sample from it, or you want to look at certain transactions. You go to your client and you say, "Dear client, can you give me some support for this transaction here?" And the client turns around and says, "Well, actually, no, because it's just a reversal, right? We corrected an error, or it's just part of accrual reversals, etc." So the purpose of this function was to leave you with the remaining transactions, leave you with only the core transactions, right? And so I'll illustrate this real quick. So I'll go ahead and click remove ins and outs. And it bases its calculation on a reference number column. Right now, it doesn't necessarily have to be a reference number, just as long as it's like an identifier column for the transaction. Okay. So in this case, I'll use the order number over here as my reference number, and then I'll go ahead and select the value column as well. All right. So based on those two factors, the audit toolbar is going to work through the data and figure out what is an in and an out and what is a core transaction. So we'll click OK and let that run, right? Now, a lot of you will know this as just a function that used to be there. However, the addition to that is instead of just giving you the core transactions, right, we've also added an additional sheet that separates out the ins and outs. All right. So you can kind of look at this and say, okay, yeah, this is what I'm expecting in terms of accrual transactions for that account. And then this is what I'm expecting for the four transactions in that account. And then as always, your original data set will still be there. You can always head back to it if you need to. But now you've got this nice split that has taken place. And hopefully that'll be quite useful for you in terms of the next steps you need to apply to your audit. All right. Okay, awesome. Okay, I think at a high level that covers most of the audit toolbar driven functions itself. There's two parts to this update that sort of sits outside of the audit toolbar, and I want to just take you through that as well. So just give me one moment. Um, right. Apologies, it's just loading on my side. Okay, awesome. All right. So there's two additions to the Audit Toolbar, sort of sitting on the outside of the Audit Toolbar. The first one is what we call CAPS. It's essentially a portal that you can use to manage and allocate your licenses. So it's the client account provisioning system. Um, and so we recognize that, especially in larger firms, there's often, people coming and going, new joiners starting, etc., and you want to manage those licenses. So the administrators in your firm would have received a separate email to the update email, which will explain to you how to get access to this system that's on my screen right now. And what it basically means is that you will then have a view of your company, right? So at this point, this is showing up for the Audit Toolbar. And you can see in our case, we've got 10 licenses purchased. So this comes in from our billing system. If you purchase more licenses, that will update within seconds, and your portal, your client's account provisioning system will reflect the amount of licenses available to you. You can also see how many licenses is in use, followed by the available licenses. Okay, now if you first assign your licenses, you might want to go for bulk assign. Okay, and if you do a bulk assign, there is a CSV template that you can download. It just requires you to put in email addresses and names and surnames, and then that pushes back up into your client portal, and you'll have the list built up. Okay, if you're just adding one or two people, you can go for the single assign and just add their detail in here, and they will show up in the table. All right. Um, Now, part of this system, right? If you have, let's say, 10 people in your firm, right, and you yourself, you are the administrator, then you will be the only one accessing this portal. Okay. Now, based on the fact that you are the administrator according to this portal, that is also the flag that is used in the Audit Toolbar to give you access to the central settings as well. So if you want to manipulate your central tick marks or your templates, you will be able to do so based on the fact that you are an administrator in this portal. Okay, I hope that makes sense. So your day-to-day or your general audit user in the firm will not see this portal. It's only administrators, and the administrators will also be able to, like I said, edit the templates on Sim as well. Okay, right. Um, I just want to see if there's anything else I wanted to mention here. I think that pretty much covers it. Okay. Now, another addition as well, and hopefully this will make future deployments quite a bit easier, is that we have been officially approved and accepted into the Microsoft platform. And so you can get your Audit Toolbar directly from Microsoft's App Source. Okay. And so, again, depending on your firm's Microsoft policies and settings, this means that you can essentially central deploy from here, right? So if there is an administrator in your firm in terms of Microsoft, your administrator can come to this page and they can actually click get this this application, and it'll bring up a group list. So your administrator will be able to say install to all auditors, and it's just going to push down and install to all auditors. So the installation process and the update process should start easing out very soon, as everybody kind of gets on board with the Microsoft App Source. Okay. Now we have seen some situations where this isn't as smooth as it can be, just because sometimes you've got differing versions of Excel and Windows and Microsoft in the firm. But if you are sort of on board with the latest Microsoft stuff as a firm, this should be a very easy process for you. Okay, amazing. All right, so that pretty much covers what I wanted to discuss today. I do want to throw in a quick request as well. If you are enjoying the Audit Toolbar and you're finding a lot of value from it, it would mean the world to us if you could go online and leave us a review there. We will send out an email afterwards with just the different links. So you can either leave us a review on Trustpilot or on our Google company page. That'll be superb. If you want, we can also reach out through client success to get a formal testimonial from you that we can then perhaps use in further marketing information. So please let us know if you are keen for that. Oh, and one more thing I wanted to throw out there. There's a link in the Audit Toolbar to a client survey, just to understand your use better, to understand your pain points better, and just to see what your experience is like on the Audit Toolbar. It's a brand new client survey behind that link, and it would be phenomenal if you could take 5 minutes and just fill that out, so we can kind of see where we are with you and how we can support you better. All right. Okay. Right. So that was everything I wanted to say. I hope this has been a very useful and insightful session for everybody. And I do hope you enjoy this new version of the Audit Toolbar. Let me just see if we've got some more questions. I don't know if I'm actually seeing the Q&A. Amazing. I'm getting some applause. I love that. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Okay. All right. There is a question here. Let me have a quick look. Right. So the question goes as follows. Can we do monetary unit sampling where we have material samples as well as MUS samples with a different materiality value used as the interval? Okay, selected at the same time. Okay, at the moment, we have to create separate populations to be able to first select all material items and then select MUS. Okay, that is a brilliant question. I love it. And it dives super, super deep. I want to check that because in theory, you should be able to, but I think there is a linkage between your MUS interval and your materiality value. So let me just see. Let's have a look. All right, let's get to a sample here. Okay. Right. So I'm on my sample, and the question relates to monetary unit sampling. So I'm going ahead and calling my monetary unit sample. And so the question is, what if I've got an interval, right, that is different to my materiality value? So the monetary unit interval in this case, I've used 5,000 there. But let's have a look. If I open the advanced section, you can actually see materiality has now filled in at 5,000 as well. Okay, so it is linked up and it is assuming that those two will correlate. Okay, so if I go ahead and enter a different value over here, it actually does break apart. Okay, so I'm saying I want to see everything material above 1300 and I want that interval. So this in theory should work because I can see it has delinked, right? So let's see what our result looks like. Okay, right. So yeah, so if you look at this material items, anything above 1300, like you can see, is grouped together at the top there. And then the remaining population has been sampled through that 5,000 interval in terms of my monetary unit sample. Okay, so the answer is yes, you can delink that. I think the issue is that by default, the Audit Toolbar is assuming that your interval and your materiality will be the same. And I think in a lot of cases it is, right? That being said, as soon as you tick this box, you can force it into a different direction. And you can say, actually, that's my materiality value, and this is my interval. And you should get a coherent result out of that. So yeah, great question, by the way. I love the detailed part of that. That's awesome. Right. Cool. Let me see if there's any other questions. Right. Here we go. Oh, all right. So here's a question. Apologies if I missed the official rollout announcement. When will the new version be available? Okay, so this version has been, it was released. Let me just check this. So it was released towards the end of, not last week, the week before. So we fully released it now. And so if you've not received this update announcement, please ping me or to me or anybody else that you've engaged with that on the team. Just send us an email and let's have a look. So it could be possible that you were not flagged in the system as an administrator or our contact. So if that is the case, I do apologize. Just ping us an email and we'll make sure you get this version. Right. Amazing stuff. Let's see if there's anything else. Awesome. Okay. Now, there we go. Okay, yeah. So, sorry, Chubi just reminded me that if you did not get the update email, just check in with your firm's champion or like the main contact, and they would have received that as well. So it's possible that, say, somebody in the firm did receive the update, but they have not pushed it out yet to everybody in the firm. So you can just check that as well. Good point. Okay, amazing. I have to say there's a few names on here which I'm very happy to see. Um, some superstar Audit Toolbar clients. So good, really, really good to see everybody. Okay, I'm going to hang around for a little bit more. So if there's any other questions, please let me know. If not, thank you so much for your time. I really hope you all have a great day, great week, great busy season, happy auditing, and reach out to us if you've got any questions or need any support. Thank you again for your continued support. So there has been a new question posted, so I just want to address that for everybody as well. So the question is as follows. One of my team members, Audit Toolbar ribbon keeps on disappearing when they close Excel and I have to redo the registration. Is there any diagnostic for this issue? Um, so thanks for raising that question. So that is something that happens sometimes, essentially when there's a step on installation where your Windows gets reminded to open up the toolbar when Excel opens, when Excel loads. And so sometimes that step just doesn't register for whatever reason. And so every time Excel loads, Windows is not reminding Excel to also load the toolbar. Now, if that is the case, please reach out to me or reach out to support myself, Tumi just sent me a message saying that I don't, I take too long to respond to emails. You guys need to email him, which, but just reach out to support and we'll give you the steps as to how to add that back in and make sure it stays there. So, yeah, thanks for that question. All right. Um, okay. Right. So another question here, when you make use of the sampling template where the total population uh, is pulling through, does it mix the debit and credit tools? Okay, so that's a great question. The sampling tool, depending on what you're trying to do, the sampling tool is going to have your debit and credit columns in a single column. Okay, so it's not something that'll be able to differentiate if you've got multiple columns with numbers in. It's just going to focus on a single column, right? And it's also going to do its best to assume where that column is sitting. However, in all the sampling screens, you can edit that transaction value column if it made the wrong assumption. So yeah, but you'll have to combine your debit and credit columns first. Okay. All right, let's see. Okay, so I think that covers everything. There we go. Um, awesome, amazing. Well, it was such a pleasure to speak to you all again, and hopefully we chat soon again. Thank you all so much for your time. Bye.